Now, in order for this jig to work, we have to come up with a way that we can secure a pivot pin at some point along this slot. And I want to be able to have a knob like this that I can adjust our pivot pin wherever I want it and then cinch it up. Once it's secured, we'll be able to get this circular motion that'll allow us to cut a circle. So let me show you what I've come up with on a pivot pin. Now, what I've come up with for a pivot pin is start out with a piece of threaded rod. This is 1/4 threaded rod. You can buy it at Lowe's or Fastenal or somewhere like that. Then I've got one of these sliding T-nuts. You can buy these things at Woodcraft. And what I did was I took that threaded rod and I went over to my pop's house and I chucked it up into his lathe and I turned down one end of it to 1/8 of an inch. Like that. And what's going to happen is that threaded rod is going to go through that T-nut, and I'll probably Loctite it right there on the end. This assembly goes up to the bottom of the jig. My knob is right here. That's how I cinch it down, and that's my pivot pin. Now, I know everybody don't have a lathe, but you might know somebody who does who would do this for you. But if you don't, I've come up with a couple other ideas which I think will work just fine that you can do in your shop on your drill press, and I'll show you those in a minute. But for now, I'm going to grab another piece of this rod and we're going to head over to my pop's house and I'm going to show you how I did this. Now, if you don't have access to a lathe, let me show you an alternative that I came up with. I took one of them sliding T-nuts and I drilled a hole right in front of that 1/4 hole. Drilled it with a 7/64. Then I came in with a 6/32 tap and I tapped that hole out. Then I took a piece of this brass rod. You can buy it at Lowe's. It's an 1/8 inch brass rod, and I threaded the end of it. So what I have is something that I can thread that brass rod into. And I'll probably Loctite it down and then take it to the portaband and snip off however much I think that I need. And I believe that's going to work pretty good as a pivot pin. The other thing that I did, just for kicks, is I took a carriage bolt and I drilled out the end of it and tapped it. And I think that would probably work okay too. But it's a lot harder to drill into that bolt than it is that sliding T-nut. So there's 3 ways that we can end up with a pivot pin. At this point, I think all that's left to do is go ahead and start putting all this together and try it out. Well, shoot. I'll run it up to the end. And I'll just let that set up for a minute. And I've gone ahead and Loctite it in that little pivot pin on our alternative mechanism. So now we can go ahead and put everything together. Take our little pivot pin assembly, feed it up to the bottom. You can see how it slides in our little slot there. And come across to the top, put our knob on. And now we'll be able to adjust this however we need to. So let's go ahead and give this thing a try here. Let's imagine I want to cut this circle out right here. What I got to do is come right in the center of that circle and drill an 1/8 inch hole in it for our pivot pin to go in. Now we can take our jig and run that pivot pin down in that little pilot hole and then go ahead and set it up however much we need right here to make our cut. So I'm not going to try to be real accurate with this, but about right there, that's about it. Now go ahead and cinch this down, and then I'll just start making the cut this way. What I'll do is I'm going to turn the router on, then I'm going to lower it down, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch, a little more, and I'll probably make 2 passes to cut this circle. So let's give it a try. So now we can just lift our router out, and here's our circle. It's perfect. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set up our alternative pivot pin assembly and test it out and see how it works. So now I've got our alternative pivot pin assembly set up. We'll cut a circle right here, and I've drilled an 1/8 inch hole right in the center. So let's set this thing up and test it out. Run that pivot pin right down through our little pilot hole. Then we can adjust this out however we need. I'm going to get it pretty close right here. Not going to get too wound up over the accuracy. About right there. I'm going to go ahead and cinch it down. Now I can cut our circle. I'm going to turn the router on. I'm going to lower it, I don't know, about 1/8 of an inch. This is 1/4 inch ply. Make 1 pass, lower it all the way down through, and cut our circle out. Okay, let's take a look at this one. Take our jig off. There's our circle. So our alternative pivot pin works just fine. So there we go. So now we've built a new and improved version of my circle cutting jig. This one's a lot better and a lot more versatile than that first one I built. Everything in this one functions and operates around the concept of that pivot pin sliding in that slot. Now I've given you a couple of alternative ways to make that pivot pin, and I've tested them and they both work good, so I'm really pleased with how this thing turned out. Now if you take a notion to build a jig like this, I'm going to have a link in the description box of this video where you can click and go over to my website. I'm going to have some more information there, and I'm going to have a place where you can download the CAD or the SketchUp file so you can print out a template and build your jig from that. I'm kind of thinking about batching out blanks of this jig and putting them out there for sale so you can get one from me and then just drill your own hole pattern based on the router you have. I don't know, we'll see, stay tuned for that. Hey, I hope you enjoyed the video and maybe learned something, and more importantly, I hope you got some of your own ideas. As always, if you like my videos, remember, give me a thumbs up, leave me some comments, and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching. Once it's tightened up and then cars driving by and everything. They don't have a lathe. I had to go, and you can do it in your shop on a threaded rod, test it out. Cars going by causing me all kinds of trouble. I didn't have that recording.